States.
And say, this is the right way to go. And I think I don't miss what in saying that I supported the electronic transmission of results.
Without any caveat?
No caveat. No caveat.
Your colleagues, majority of them voted against it. Some of them cited reasons which a lot of people don't find quite logical.
That's not correct, sir. That's not correct.
What do you mean not correct?
What I mean not correct is that if you watch the clips of the voting on that day on the floor of the House before a rowdy session, you will see that the majority actually affirmed that they wanted electronic voting.
Majority?
Majority,
including members of the APC?
Of course.
Are you of the APC?
No, not at all.
But why did you then invite the NCC to come and give explanation on whether or not electronic voting can hold when actually the INEC itself, the electoral management body, had already put in enough documents and evidence to show that it can handle it based on the public hearing it had and all the technical engagement it had with the other key stakeholders?
That was also one of the questions all of us kept raising. Why are we inviting people to come before us when they have actually appeared during the public hearing? They have told us their position. INEC have tried losing the electronic transmission of results. They did so in Ondo. They did also in Edo. They did in some House of Assembly constituency elections in Nasarawa, and all of them succeeded. And so why are we opening another public hearing during the consideration of report, or what are we actually going to do? And so some of us were like, we don't change the rules midway. We must allow the rules to flow the way they have been gazetted from the beginning. And so we...
From that first proceeding, we understand, of course, the presiding officer was saying, that was the deputy speaker, I guess, was saying, okay, NCC and... Okay, it was even the speaker.
It was actually
himself.
the speaker.
It was the speaker
yeah,
himself
when the South section became very rowdy,
yes.
And then the speaker came in to say, well, gentlemen, let me intervene.
Okay,
let us ask NCC and
INEC. I heard him clearly.
Yes, to come.
But on the day of the proceeding, that was the Friday, we didn't see INEC.
Yes, because they knew that INEC's position was going to remain, what they did at the public hearing. And they prevented INEC from coming.
Who prevented INEC?
Of course, the leadership, of course. Who else would have done that? Otherwise, why would INEC not come? And if the resolution was that we're going to invite INEC and NCC to come, and I think if NCC alone came, I think we should allow, postpone until INEC also comes to bear witness to what we are talking about. And in the first instance, the INEC, the NCC vice chairman, executive vice chairman, was he the one that came in person? The answer is no. So it means that any other person from INEC should have been asked to come and speak on behalf of INEC. So it mustn't be the chairman of INEC. And so for them not to have waited for any one of them to appear, it was already a position that has already been compromised.
Now, how important is electronic transmission in an election at this time in the country?
Well, you see, electronic transmission gives you a backup as to what actually happened at the polling units. And because a lot has happened with election results from polling units to collection centers. And that is what we are trying to prevent. And INEC itself has said, yes, we have understood that this has been a problem to credible election. And so give us the opportunity. We want to transmit these results from the polling units electronically. Is it not an irony for you to approve that electronic equipments are going to be used in an election, and then you say you cannot transmit election results electronically? Does it make sense at all? It doesn't. And for you to now say you want to have a caveat attached to the transmission of results, it means that you are not actually making a law. Then you should have left it the way it was. Even the old provision was that INEC was going to conduct the election in the manner in which it suits possible. Yes. So which was okay. So what are we amending?
Now, what was the exact version of what was passed, especially that section 52.2 of in the House of Reps, the version passed by the House?
Section 62.2 of the House resolution, of 52.2 of the committee's recommendation to the House was that voting an election and transmission of results under this bill shall be in accordance with the procedure determined by the Commission. And we said that is too open. It's too vague. Doesn't make any sense. Yes, INEC may at the end of the day say we want to transmit result electronically. But you see, what if you got someone at the end of the day who is head of INEC and decide to even say he's going to transmit result in a manner that is not known to Nigerians?
So that was where you felt it was necessary.
It was necessary
to make it very explicit.
To make it very explicit, to make Nigerians know that this law that we are talking about, that even the people who are going to implement this law, which is INEC, have already said that yes, we have the capacity to do so. And so if they say they have the capacity to do so, what are we after? In
making it explicit, what eventually was passed by the House of Reps was giving discretion to INEC. I can't remember the exact word.
The word is may.
But
that INEC may.
You said that the National Electoral Commission, Independent National Electoral Commission, may transmit the result as practicable, right?
Yes, they will determine the method of transmission. That the procedure of the transmission of result shall be in accordance to as determined by INEC.
How legally binding is that discretion?
It's not legally binding, sir. That's what I'm saying. That if you bring in an INEC chairman who decides to say, I want to transmit election by an unknown process to Nigerians, you have no right to say no, because the law does not tie him to any
Honorable
process.
Marin, I asked that question because we've also looked at the flaws that comes with election, especially as it has to do with transmission of results. And the fact that most of the time, like politicians would always say, these results are doctored midway. Now, providing a clear provision that says that the election results must be transmitted electronically provides a legally binding, proviso for INEC. I want to take you back to what happened after the 2015 elections. That was the first time that the use of card readers were fully optimized during the elections. Litigation after the election indicated that many people challenged the election results for non-usage of the card reader. Now, what did the court say at the end of the day? That the fact that card readers were not used to accredit some voters is not enough reason to cancel an election.
Absolutely.
Do you foresee a similar thing playing out with the e-transmission of results? If that is not properly mainstreamed and explicitly expressed in the Electoral Act, at the end of the day, it will be useless, litigation-wise.
You see, that's the reason why many nations allow a flexible constitution, where bylaws are also made to support constitutional provisions. And most of amendments of laws are emanated from judgments of courts. When a court gives a judgment and there is no clear, interpretation as to what the law says on this matter, that is when Parliament looked at that section and said, no, we have to make this very clear, such that subsequent judgments or litigations do not have to be without any clarity. And because of such judgments, we said no, that as a country, we cannot continue in this manner. We must come up and say, this is the nature or the way and manner in which our elections shall be conducted in our country. And let everybody follow that process. And I think that process is going to bring about the election of credible people into every sector. And by so doing, we're going to have good governance across the country. And if you look at what happened, are we happy with the situation on ground now? Insecurity everywhere, total failure. I was just listening to my brother, Senator I.D. Gang, who just finished talking about security. These are all issues that when you get back home, you are confronted with. And we feel that if you put the right systems in place, people are going to be protected, the lives of the people are going to matter, because those people know exactly where they are coming from. And so we are looking at, if you do not give a tentative definition as to the method in which you want election results to be transmitted, then you're going to have a problem. If it has happened in some states and it was successful, we don't see a reason why it will not happen in other states.
What would you say to people, those who opposed that transmission, based on the fact that they said there's no network connectivity within their domain, that they feel that their constituents will be disenfranchised if that happens. Particularly those, let's take, for instance, some of the riverine areas where to even get ballot papers during elections it poses a challenge in most cases. Now, the idea of no network connectivity, isn't that a justifiable position that results may be tampered with if it is done electronically?
You cannot say that the entire Edo state is covered by network. I served in Edo, and I served in the Ovia Southwest. They have quite a lot of riverine areas in that area. And there was a time when I was serving that the then military administration conducted this election on 0 parties. And I was asked to monitor election in some of those riverine areas. We got there late, but we got there with election materials, and elections were held, and we returned late, but we returned with election results. And I think if that has been tested in Edo, it means some riverine areas have also tested that nature. And so those opposing to this is just on a partisan basis. I don't think they have any cogent reason to say this will not work here, this will not work there, because you are not the people who are conducting elections.
So who is afraid of
the people who is conducting the election is INEC, and they have said we can do it.
So who is afraid of electronic transmission?
Well, they may not be afraid. They may not be afraid, so to say, but they are just following maybe a partisan position that they don't even understand what it means at the end of the day. Because the issue is that you cannot say INEC has said this is the way and manner. I think we have capacity to do ABCD, and you are aware of the fact that that ABCD is a credible way of doing that thing. And you say, no, let's just leave it optional for them. Let them choose whichever way they want to do it. And we are saying, no, it's not right. Because when you have leaders that takes over positions, and those leaders have different, interpretations of what their functions are. And you can have some very authoritarian leaders that would want to do the excess. And that will not mean well or augur well for our country. And so we felt it is not right. Let us put this law in the perspective that INEC said they can do this one. Let's give it to them. If they fail to do,
then you have a right to.
We have a right to hold them responsible, because they have also said to us that they can do it.
Is it also a problem that even while you're arguing about e-transmission of results, where is it going to be transmitted to is another issue, which I really didn't find expressly provided for in the amendments we are all talking about. We know that there's a collation process manually, and it goes manually, the papers trail are there and everything, all of that. But in e-transmission of results, and if that is eventually effected, and if INEC decides to do that, would we be talking about a central server for INEC? And if we are talking about a central server for INEC where all those e-transmitted results fall into or dump into, the probative value of that central server to serving as a real backup for what has been collated manually. That is a gap I have noticed in all of this. I don't know what explanation you have for that.
Well, if INEC has collected results electronically in Edo, they have done so in Ondo. Have we asked them the question where they transmitted those results to? We did during the public hearing. It was very explicit. They have their base stations where all these things can be transmitted in the states and in the national level. And that means you have quite a lot of gadgets to check each other. Transmission of is transmitted to state and is transmitted again to their main server in Abuja. And so if what you get at the state, if you lose what you have in the state, you still get it here. If you lose what is here, you still get it at the state.
You know why I asked that question? It still takes us back to what happened in recent 2019 election, when there was a report generally, including YAGA and other civil society organizations, even INEC before the election, that they're going to do accreditation, and the accredited voters will be sent to a server. During litigation, INEC said there was no server. And the court believed INEC when he said there was no server. Because if you say you are going to send accredited voters, transmit data of accredited voters, it definitely would have to be in a server. But when an electoral commission says there's no server, how then do you explain that? That's why I'm asking this question.
Today, INEC is saying that they have server. INEC say they have servers in this, they have servers, control rooms in the states, they have also at their national headquarters. So are we still going to be arguing that they don't have server anymore if they didn't have before? Certainly not. INEC presently now have servers where these election results will be transmitted to. They transmitted the same results in Edo to those servers. They transmitted the same results in Ondo to those servers. They transmitted the same results of Nasarawa House of Assemblies to those servers. So I don't think it's a question that when INEC tells you that they have, when they didn't have, they told you they didn't have. Now they say we have. Why are we doubting them?
Now, is it not curious that
I think we should allow them to exercise those functions which they were put in place to do.
But did you directly, I don't know whether you were part of the committee, that INEC committee electoral reforms, were you part of it?
I'm not part of it, but I sat at the public hearing.
You sat at the public hearing. Were these questions, did these questions come up?
Certainly.
Did they provide a credible explanation to it?
People ask them questions. If you are saying you can transmit this electronically, do you have servers and places? They said yes, they have. They are ready for it. And they have tested those servers in Edo, they have tested them in Ondo, and tested them also in Nasarawa House of Assembly. So I don't see any reason why we should still be doubting them.
Is it not curious that, because we had an INEC director of publicity here last week who told us that even before all of this started happening, that there was a technical committee meeting in which NCC, the telecom operators, INEC itself, and everybody, who they feel will be instrumental to electronic transmission of result, were part of that meeting. And they had a consensus that this is practicable. Only for NCC, the same NCC, to come to the House and tell Nigerians that it is not possible because the 3G, which they can use to transmit election result, has not covered all parts of the country. I think the figure he gave is just 49.2%. That was very economical with truth.
And that's why some of us have called for the prosecution of the INEC man who appeared before the floor of the House. Because he lied under oath. Yes, he lied under oath by not giving Nigerians the truth. At the meeting they held with INEC, with telecom operators, these issues was discussed, like you said. We are also aware of that report, and that it was agreed that it's practically possible that election results have been transmitted electronically across the country. So if NCC will single out itself out of the entire committee, and then came out to say that only 49% is possible, you can see that there was already a sellout in one way. And so we are calling for the prosecution of the man who lied under oath, because the report presented by the telecom operators, NCC and INEC, is with us. And the recommendations of those reports are also with us. And so if you now come to begin to say things different from what is known to that report, it means that you must be saying things differently. And we felt that he should be, in a country where it is a safe country, I think by now security agencies should have invited him, because the SSS have those reports, they have recommendations of those meetings, and I think at this stage you should have invited him and say, why are you saying different things from what we have, what was obtained from a meeting where all of you and the operators in this sector agreed upon, and they told you it was possible. So why would you under oath now begin to say a different thing? So I think that man should be under prosecution.
How do lawmakers like you, who have been canvassing this kind of progressive thoughts on what needs to be done in amending the electoral process, how do you intend to engage during the conference to ensure that the final copy of the electoral amendment bill is close to what you desire and what Nigerians desire?
Well, for some of us, we have not considered Section 52 up to now. That's our belief, and we stand by it.
But your leadership says it has been considered and carried.
Well, that is this thing. We are all elected representatives of the people. And if they say, it does not mean that I must say.
Were you part of the people that worked out?
Certainly. Certainly. And so they know the procedure. And if the speaker had put up like a motion and like a resolution on behalf of the House, because when the speaker makes a statement, that statement should be followed. If it was that NCC and INEC should come and address us, NCC has come. Let us wait for INEC to come.
Dates.